Thank you, Diana. Well, the little notes that I have. So I'm Glenn's younger sister, Terry. He was 2.5 years older. So I met him in 1965 when I was brought home from the hospital. So I think I've known him longer than anybody. He was the last of my immediate family. So I'm very lucky to have the extended family here. So, as has been mentioned, and what I thought I would talk about is, I can't imagine having a more fun big brother. As a girl who, my parents, when Glenn was 2 years old, they built a house on Lake Zembra in Minnesota, which has Carver Regional Park all surrounding it. And when we were young, my mom was a little concerned as Glenn got older that he not hurt his little sister. And so she said, well, I'm really not comfortable with you wrestling with her because, it can just get kind of rambunctious. And she, Mom and Dad were really into fun. They met in Alpine, the Uller Ski Club in Minneapolis, and they were super adventurous. That's where Glenn and I got it from. So Zembra Lake was a lake that kids could be comfortable in. It was small enough to not be dangerous. So we were in it all summer long. And whether we were swimming, and eventually Dad and Glenn built a second deck for the pontoon boat. So we had a deck with a ladder up to it and a railing around it. We could jump or dive off of it. And I tell you, we had epic games of pontoon boat tag with our neighbor kids. there were a good number of kids in the neighborhood about the same age. Some of the boys were a bit older than Glenn, and so I was like his number one playmate, lucky me, because he got the message from Mom, you need to be gentle with Terry. So we adapted. Instead of wrestling, we had tickle fights. And I knew just where he was ticklish on his sides, and he'd grab my wrist, and I'd take my foot and put it up on his side where he was ticklish. It was just fun all the time. When Glenn was about 12, we could stay home alone, and so we created all kinds of wonders in the basement if the weather wasn't good enough outside Minnesota. When we weren't doing all the fun outdoor stuff, we created whole other worlds indoors. He had such an imagination, and I just ate that up. And one of the things we did was, on our own, just in the summer, go into the Carver Park. Our family, we tapped trees for maple syrup a couple times, not too long. But one of the things we did is there was a creek not too far away. And it was about, 4.5 feet wide. And especially in the spring when it was really running, we'd go over there, and we used to have our little boats we'd put in and watch them go down and so on. But when we first got there, first thing he does is leap across the creek. And he wants me to follow him. He always wanted me to follow him. I was very lucky. He always wanted me along. And so I was hesitating. I was scared. I was younger and smaller. And I was intimidated to jump across the creek. And he said something to me that pretty much built my confidence and courage for the rest of my life. He said, and he was about 12, he said, if you just see yourself doing it successfully, you'll do it. And you know what? That's true. It's that confidence thing. And so I was still hesitating, but finally made the leap, and I made it. And there were so many other things, all the sports that we did. When Mom and Dad, when their business started doing better, even before that, they went in with another couple and bought half of a used 27-foot Pearson Renegade sailboat up on the Apostle Islands of Lake Superior, which is a fabulous place to be aside from the black flies. But it just was a fabulous place to explore and gather driftwood and explore the rocky coasts, and there were sometimes like tunnels going in from Lake Superior. Can be really rough, and from the outer islands in the winter there were some amazing places, amazing beaches, and so on. Eventually we all took a community schools course on scuba diving and went down to the Caribbean to scuba dive. Sometimes we would go out with companies from shore, but other times we would again rent a sailboat or a motorboat and just go out and find dive locations, according to the books and so on. And there was one island called Dominica that has a boiling lake on it, and Glenn had to go there, and Diane was with us. And we hiked all the way, it's quite a ways, quite a hike to the boiling lake, and he had to go down. It was really steep. I didn't even go down there. Didn't follow him for once, but he had to stick his finger in the boiling lake so that he wouldn't let anything stop him if it was at all possible. Um, in 1976, that was our country's 200-year anniversary, and I love my country as much as Glenn does, and so we both were committed. I don't know whose idea it was, but we decided to have a parade through our neighborhood, which had about 30 homes. It was a nice size. There were other kids around, but it wasn't big. And so he's driving the lawn tractor, pulling a trailer, and we had put 2 tires together and some kind of cover over it and made it into the birthday cake. And somehow we had something resembling candles. And then I knew friends. I played the flute. So one of the kids played a drum. We had a couple other instruments. And it was just kind of your classic, kids. We were probably 13, 14 doing this. Probably about maybe 10 of us total, 12 maybe. Sent out flyers, a small neighborhood, and a lot of the neighbors came out and cheered us on. It was just fun. Glenn was also crazy, fun crazy. So I just only have 2 stories left to demonstrate what it was like to be with Glenn, for his whole life. The first is that when Mom and Dad, we were late teens by now. I might have even been in college, and we were at the house. My parents had gone somewhere, and they were putting an addition on the house, but it was the weekend, and so none of the workers were there, and the scaffolding was all sitting there. And I don't know what went through Glenn's mind, but you can start imagining a whole bunch of scaffolding just sitting there. And I was probably inside doing homework, which when I was younger, I'd be up in my room doing homework, and the garages were underneath. And I would hear Glenn pounding away at like age 13, 14, bang, 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 and he was doing something to the lawn tractor, or he knew how to weld at an early age, and he was always, but sometimes he'd get frustrated. I could hear him swearing down there or whatever he was trying to do. But this time the scaffolding was just sitting there, and we had this pontoon boat with an upper deck. And he didn't ask me to help him. He just started taking as many pieces of scaffolding as he could, these metal bars, and going out to the pontoon boat, going up to the top. I didn't see till he was quite into this project. And he was building a scaffolding tower on top of the second floor of the pontoon boat. And the lake was calm. I mean, he was sane. And it got taller and taller and taller, and then when he was done, he came inside and said, "Hey, come look what I've done." That was the usual way. And so I came out, and I'm like, oh my God. I wasn't that surprised because he did this kind of thing. But he's like, "Come on, let's take it out and go jump off it." And so I said, "Well, I usually did." Okay. And so we slowly motored out just in front of our house, calm. And he had his measuring tape with him, and we got to the top, and there was the board that I had planned to stand on if I was going to actually jump off this thing. And that he had provided something to hold on to on the side. And so I was okay with that. But then there was another board above that with no handles, and he had to go from that one. Well, the top one was 33 feet, we measured. From where his feet were on that platform to the water, the one I jumped off of was 30 feet, which took a lot of courage for me to do, because, I mean, when you're falling from 30 feet, as some of you probably know, like, you can think about things as you're falling. You can say, okay, I better point my toes, or whatever, and so we had done that a couple times, and we were kind of ready to make our way back when we heard a motorboat. There were a lot of motorboat, water ski boats on this lake, and I guess Glenn hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about that. And we're like, uh-oh, I hope they know to slow down and not create a wake. And so we kind of watched, and we're waving our arms, and they seemed just clueless. And so this motorboat with this big wake was approaching us, and we're like, oh my God. We got down on the main floor and thought, gosh, you guys, now it's inevitable. They're so close that we're going to have a wake. So we just couldn't believe this person couldn't put 2 and 2 together. And so it went around us, created this big wake, and thank goodness, we just both, we didn't even talk about it. We automatically knew what to do. We just got on the main floor, and we did this as hard as we could. And we did, it didn't fall over, because it would have broken the whole, the railing off the top deck, and could have tipped us all upside down. But it didn't. And that's kind of how Glenn's courageous projects were. Sometimes, you know, like this next one in Alaska, where I've lived for 35 years. Um, Somehow, Glenn never got in the worst trouble he could have gotten in. So they came up to Alaska, and all of us went sea kayaking. And I had been taught, of course, had been up there and had sea kayak quite a bit. But Glenn insisted on getting out on an iceberg, getting him. I don't know how he got out of that kayak. I mean, kayaks are kind of tricky to get out of, and to balance, and how he got out of the kayak onto the iceberg. And I was telling him the whole time, Glenn, don't do that, because you never know when it's going to calve. The glacier wasn't that far away, and that thing calves all the time, anytime. You never know. And then it's not. I mean, that's huge ice that's very dense, falling into the water, and parts of it come off, and it makes everything churns. As the big wave comes out, it's like being in a river with huge chunks of ice. And I was trying to communicate because he's sitting there just in a dry suit. I'm like, it could drown you by pushing you under. But Glenn just, he didn't think that was going to happen, I guess. And so we didn't get that photo up, but I have a photo of him in a dry suit standing on this iceberg that's probably only about this big. So yeah, it was always at least entertaining. But like Diane said, the love was always there, and he was always good-natured, and our mom and dad had modeled successfully, how to settle disputes in a calm and reasonable and respectful manner. A huge gift to both of us. So I was fortunate to spend some really good time with him just 2 days before he left us. And I'll always be thankful for everything. He made me who I am. So I miss him dearly, and I thank you all for coming and supporting us. I guess Trevor is now going to say a few words.